Well, welcome everyone to our Mental Health Awareness Week for 2020. This is Natalie Ashdown, and I'm joined on the line here by Lance from Love Me, Love You. And it's a really great opportunity to bring you this presentation. Just before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands on which we meet and acknowledge their elders past, present, and emerging, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that might be on the line here today. So our presentation, I've been really looking forward to it. Mental health awareness is such an important topic, and our opportunity to focus on this week is what we're doing here at Open Door Coaching. I'm joined by Lance Piacconi, and today Lance is going to be talking about empowering caregivers around youth mental health and his mental health journey. And we've just been talking about kids and our children and how they're coping at the moment with the different things that are going on around lockdown. Let me just quickly introduce Lance to you. He's a former AFL football player who transitioned to a career in fitness. He had a fitness career for about 10 years, and then he founded the Love Me, Love You Foundation back in 2013. He's got two boys under 5, and he's the CEO of Love Me, Love You. And Love Me, Love You, I asked Lance to come and talk to us because Love Me, Love You is a mental health not-for-profit organisation really focusing on positive social change in mental health and outcomes for our community, and really focusing on what we can do with our youth. So Lance, thank you so much for joining us here at Open Door Coaching and sharing your message. I'm really looking forward to talking with you and hearing from you. So perhaps I can hand over to you, and we'll just sit back and enjoy your message. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for attending and those that will be joining us soon. So I much appreciate, obviously, Mental Health Week is obviously another reminder for us all to, create these conversations and understand the conversations and connectivity that we need to have with the people in our lives, and more importantly, the connectivity into ourselves and in how we are taking care of ourselves and, and looking at implementing those tools and practices to make sure that we have a more positive mental health journey than not. It's for myself and the work that we do at Love Me, Love You. We provide education and training and education sessions, training, peer-to-peer support, support pathway programs, the whole thing that makes sure people the tools and education and resources are accessible, and make sure that we can help people implement them into their own lives. But much appreciated, and thank you very much, Natalie, for this opportunity. As I said, any opportunity to share our message is a humbling experience for me, because when we look back on it to what my life is and talk about the journey that will come through and what we'll do today, as well as look through a little bit of our empowering caregivers, just some information and resource there that can be shared, and how to support teen mental health sort of thing in that space. There's obviously been a tricky period of life that we're all dealing with, and working through this position, because COVID has been a challenge for everybody. Even the most robust of people that are sort of really rocking in life have really felt the despair that this period of time has created. So, but I will go into sharing my screen and make this happen. So, as I said, Natalie, through here, my appreciation of where my life is at and what I do is, I founded this organisation just on 7 years ago after having lived with mental illness, substance abuse, and suicide attempts over a period of time, and get to what I do today, which is very exciting in terms of being able to spread a message and share a journey with others that are a part of it. So, looking forward to see how we go here. First of all, obviously, every conversation starts with listening, and we always start with this because mental health conversations and needs, and just in terms of life conversations, about that appreciation of just being able to listen to somebody, because that's what people want, and that's what people need. So, as opposed to providing answers, which we'll get through in a second, it's not about providing answers to people; it's about providing opportunities. And one is through obviously listening to their story or their experiences, but also just listening to the process and understanding and how we actually process that information to make sure that we can move forward. Whereas mental health is defined as a state of well-being where every individual realizes his or her potential and can cope with the normal stresses of life. Okay, and we'll stop there for a second and understand that we all deal with stresses differently, and the normal stresses of life occur in our everyday. You know, it's just from things from at home through to work, sitting in traffic, financial issues, our physical health. You know, sort of increasing our ability and interpretation of how we actually access stress. Okay, and that stress is an all part of our life, and if we interpret it the right way, it's just an opportunity to shine. So making sure that we can use those tools and implement the practices to overcome those, and can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. That's that'd be the nice way to look at it and implement it and make it work for your life. But obviously the challenges that come with life, that experiences, no matter who you are, where you come from, or what you do. We're all sort of, we're not invincible to the stresses of life in terms of the experiences that come from, and a lot of things that impact our mental health, things that are obviously also out of our control. But to understand how we control those controllables and actually use those processes and understand that process to make sure we move forward. But what we're dealing with in the mental health space is that 1 in 2 people will diagnosed with a type of mental illness in their lifetime. Will show the signs and symptoms, but about 3/4 of the people actually don't get the help and support that they need, which is obviously the work that we do in trying to create awareness and a safer, more inclusive and supportive environment to make sure people are getting that support. There's on average 180 attempts of suicide every single day in Australia, and 8 average that people die from suicide every single day in Australia. But 3/4 of those suicides that happen are male, and that is a global stat. That's working, but you're twice as likely as a male to die from suicide, but you're twice as likely to attempt suicide if you're a female. So it's around understanding that sort of information, is that we're all a part of this, and these conversations out for everybody to make sure that we can sort of create that supportive environment as we keep talking about. Over this COVID period, on modelling behaviour and data around that, is that there's said to be an increase in mental illness and suicide rate over this period of time, and for the next 6 to 12 months, and obviously the flow-on effect from what it's been created. So. But I'll touch through, what we're going to do today is about understanding my journey, where I've been, and as I said, we'll sort of work through some empowering caregivers information there, so you can take that back into your lives and make sure it all sort of works. For me, and I'll touch base quickly through this, is that this should have been the end for me. My last suicide attempt was in October 2011, so just on 9 years ago. It's coming up to my anniversary for that. And it was that lived experience of living with undiagnosed anxiety and depression for such a long period of time, from my early days as a teenager, where anxiety was taking over due to the experiences that I was having at school and at home. In terms of my social world, as the impact that it was having about that process of understanding that I felt like I just didn't belong. The social harassment or the social experiences and disconnection that I had from my life and the people around me, created a world of non-belonging and non-belonging inside my head and my heart, and just not knowing who I was and how I was dealing with it. And through this whole period of time, even through when I played AFL for 8 years, that I had an amazing amount of support around me. But support is only what we want it to be as well. It's about understanding the triggers and the emotional responses into those experiences, and understanding the support that is available, and then allowing ourselves to be supported. Going through that experience through a school, and I said I got drafted to Adelaide Crows when I was 17. So I was a little tacker. I was only 17 and 3 months, I think, when I moved over to Adelaide, away from family, and started what was supposed to be living my dream. And what that's supposed to be, that dream, was an internal nightmare that I was dealing with, and or not dealing with, to tell the truth. So, but working through that process, even through my AFL days, being supported by it, but the very, very connection I had into family is still the one thing that gets me through my every single day. But from post AFL, I was a fully qualified, high functioning drug addict. and dealing and making that process of understanding a drug addiction or any type of addiction is the process of escape. And that's what I was doing, and trying to escape every single day just from the reality that was inside my head. And the more I could, further I ran, actually the darker and the deeper that I got into my mental illness and my addiction, and not allowing myself to understand the positive things that were a part of my life, because I had many, many amazing experiences that were in my life, but I didn't appreciate it and wasn't grateful for them. And not so much because I didn't want to, but because I just didn't understand how it could be, and working through that. And then, as I said, it got me to this point where I had nearly jumped off a roof and sort of contemplated the idea of actually ending my life, and which is a familiar story for a lot of people. As I said, 180 attempts per day of suicide on average in Australia alone. 65,000 plus per year. And for me, it's about the disconnection, the anger, the hatred, the embarrassed, feeling and being embarrassed, and the hurt that the self-hurt and the coping strategies that I was using for that. And that obviously then flowed on to the rest of the people in my life and the people that I was surrounding myself with. And the idea of suicide. And that very idea of suicide is not so much wanting to die. It's about just wanting to end the pain that you're dealing with right that very moment. And a lot of suicide are linked to mental illness and living with mental illness for a period of time, but a lot of it is from acute experiences that take us from hero to zero really quickly as well. So, but people ask why, what got me down and what got me through, and I believe there was a higher energy to what my life was about, and process that to not following through with it, and that love and as I said, the very connection to family that I had and the dreams that I wanted to be. And as Natalie mentioned before, my dreams has always been to be a father, and to think 9 years ago nearly that I took away that dream to what I am now is my most important role that I have, which is not the CEO and founder of Love Me Love You Foundation, but it is a husband and a father of my two amazing boys, who Alexander is just turned 5 and Lennox is 3 in January. So, and dealing with that and appreciating that and spending the time and being mindful of the experiences and being present with that experience is an amazing thing for me. And I get to live that every day, and I'm very appreciative of the support that I get to do that. And then plus obviously the work that I do here, where I am, I connect with thousands and thousands of people every year through our presentations and workshops and training programs and support pathway and events and everything that it is. So and I get to love that, and I love that very experience and being able to share my story with that. It's it's just what it does. I said at the very start, is about that sort of connectivity by sharing our journey with others and allowing that process to happen with others. Because the hardest thing you'll do is to do things by yourself, and especially with mental illness, when you're trying to work through the process of getting recovering from that, is that you can't do it by yourself. And our big mantra at Love Me Love You is that no one travels their journey alone, and that's the very experience that we need to appreciate and be a part of and allow that to happen. But working through that, obviously a lot of soul searching and a lot of recovery and a lot of processes and practices that I put into myself and investment I do every single day. And we'll run through this here and how that works. Is that we do talk about awareness. Okay, we talk about awareness, acknowledgement, and action. And from a parent, for a child, for wherever it is, and it's about the self-awareness and understanding who you are and how you go about things and your triggers for the positive and the not so positive things that happen in your life. And it's about self-awareness lays the very foundation that is your life. You need to invest in yourself and who you go about it and how you make that process work for you, so that you can build on that and allow that process to work every single day in your life and aim to move forward as a collective. But not as all as that may seem. And when we're talking about this with a lot of around anxiety and depression, is that anxiety is about understanding that there's a lot of triggers that we're thinking about moving forward and that aren't actually reality. And that very link between the non-reality and reality part of life is creating a lot of anxiety in people. But it's also understanding is that there's a difference between being anxious and having clinical diagnosed anxiety. So it's understanding how that works for the individual, but how we focus on you and make it work for you. And that's the very idea, is that without you, there's no us, and I need us, and you need us, and allow that to make it work. And the very idea of investing in yourself every single day with your mental health and wellbeing strategy is really, really important. And being able to reflect on that and evolve with it. Talking just before with Natalie about the evolvement process, that things are happening that we wanted to happen in life and through this period of time through COVID, but understanding that there's certain things that we can't do and there's certain things that we can't action anymore, but allowing ourselves to evolve with that process and do what we can do and control what we can control. And just with that sort of awareness component that we look at, is that we talk about a mental health matrix. And a mental health matrix for here is what we talk about in terms of this sort of being able to evaluate your system, and you are your system. And it's about understanding through the mental health spectrum in terms of looking at that on the pink line. That's for the very left. The positive mental health is, the 10, where the flourishing mental health, and people are, working through that process and taking care and implementing the sort of supportive structures that are available to part of their life. Right to the very right, which is obviously the 0 to sort of 3 area, where it's a high risk, and that's a clinical diagnosis of mental illness. Is impacting someone's life very devastatingly, and making it work. And the same thing with our well-being. The very idea between mental health and well-being and the relationship that it has, but allowing ourselves to understand that we're all on this spectrum and we're all a part of this type of conversation. And we all need to know that how it works for us, and being able to have those honest conversations with ourselves to make it work. And then we break it up into sort of different domains here. We've got physical, social, psychological, and emotional, or our spiritual world. And understanding the very idea about this is around the behaviours and activities that we're doing into these different domains, and allowing us sort of understanding the relationship that it has between every domain and the behaviours that we do and the activities that we do, to make sure that we're having a more positive mental health journey. But what it does, it actually, when you write it down and put it through a mental health strategy, it gives you a solid framework to work with. And giving yourself a solid framework to work with allows you to actually make it work. Okay, because when when sort of those experiences happen that we're not wanting to happen, or the things that are out of our control, it's actually how we bounce back through that. And this is that whole resilience conversation that needs to be had, is about how do we not so much bounce back, but how do we bounce through, and it is through our self-care activities, and then implementation of those practices to work through here. And then we talk about acknowledgement, and there's 2 components around acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is around behaviours and our relationships. I'm aware of what my life is and all the things that are happening, but I'm also need to be understanding of the behaviours to move forward with, and the activities to move forward with. But it's also about acknowledging those relationships as well, and the supportive one. And every relationship that comes into our life is an experience to learn from and to be a part of. And it's about understanding how we plan and work that routine. Because as adults, as children, as wherever you are, we thrive off routine and that very structure around that. It's not about actually having everything sort of to the minutes and working through that, but it's about giving yourself that framework of your routine, and being able to evolve with that, as we talked about before. And that very idea of, we talk about here the importance of connection and staying connected. It's been a very challenging experience over this last 6 months, about with the restrictions in place. That very connection is something that we thrive off as humans. As humans, our mental health is actually measured between the energy between multiple people, and appreciating the energy there is allowing ourselves to say, okay, I've got this. Because isolation and loneliness will be the number 1 impactor of someone's mental health journey moving forward, because we just, as humans, we thrive off that, and we need that. And the more we withdraw from those systems, the harder it becomes as a human. And, even the most robust of people through this period of time are finding it hard about that lack of connection that we're all having. And it's about understanding the support that's available to us, and support that is around us, and finding the meaning for those relationships and behaviours, and finding the purpose of why you're doing it, or why you're a part of it. and appreciating that. And so whenever we've become appreciate the acknowledgement of all those different sectors in terms of the behaviours and relationships, the better off we're all going to be to move forward and allow ourselves to play our role in our lives. Because, as I said, this is the very idea around love me, love you. The very title that it is about I need to love here. I need to acknowledge this person inside. So before I can, really give that out and be able to sort of fill my own cup up. Okay, fill my own cup up with the love, the empathy, the care, the support, the positive activities and behaviours, and positive relationships. About because you can't pour from an empty cup. And the understanding is because people are always trying to give and give and give, but you just be understand also how you can give to yourself and making that work. And understanding the acknowledgement around here that talk about relationships is about understanding who's in your crew. Who are up to the 5 people that are in your crew. Who can you have these types of conversations with? Who can you share these experiences with? And consistently being able to do that. And that very idea around consistently being able to do that and checking in with each other is about normalizing the very behavior that is your life, in terms of these types of conversations around your mental health. And the more we can normalize it, the better off we're all going to be when we're in that time of need to have these type of conversations, that it is just a part of every day and allowing it to happen. Part of that acknowledgement component, and this is what we're looking through here, is that, it's also not about acknowledging what we look for. It's about what we listen for as well. And the very idea here is what we term a mental health challenge that people might be facing. The helplessness, the feeling trapped, the burdening of others, the lack of belonging, the hopeless, the guilt, the escape, those sorts of ideas around those sort of conversation cues, what we call, is understanding how, we can read the play a little bit. And then, as I said, excessive use of negative emotive words, excessive use of singular first person, increased use of absolutist words, and obviously increased talk about death or suicide. And being able to listen for that and then process that. Because as I said at the very start, every good conversation starts with listening and being able to listen for these certain things and not just think that they're throwaway lines. When people are sort of saying this, is obviously there's cries for help in these words and looking at that. Then we look at the risk factors, okay, and risk factors that become part of our life. We break that up also into 3 different factors here, 3 different domains: biological, psychological, and environmental. And working through these different ones is about understanding the different components. And when we're talking about treating and supporting people, is about it's understanding the underlying causes of why we got to this stage. Okay, so it's not about understanding how we treat the effect, it's about how we treat the cause and processing that. And we can understand and gather the right information around why people have got to this stage, how we process to make sure we move forward. Is understanding in that very information about the information process. And we can process that very information about where it's come from. We can actually treat it a lot better and actually have people in a better position to recover from their challenges. Around this acknowledgement thing, a component as well is these 5 questions that you need to ask yourself, and being able to sort of have everybody do this. And this is from children right through to people, in their 80s, is about what made me happy today. Who did I make happy today? What did I learn today? Who am I grateful for today? And what will I be grateful for tomorrow? And that very last one there is about understanding how we emotionally pay it forward to ourselves. What is the thing that I'm looking forward to tomorrow? And what all these questions should be able to answer with is you. What made me happy today is me. Well, who did I make happy today? I made myself happy. What did I learn today? I learned maybe a way I've dealt with something a little bit better than I did before. Or, and it's not talking about these things. It's not the biggest of things that we learn or make happy or grateful for. It's about the small gestures that we have a part of our life and making that work. And, what will I be grateful for tomorrow? Me. And it's really interesting to have this exercise and see how long it takes people to write their own name on that list and work that through. And then we talk about action, because I'm aware of it, I acknowledge it, and then I need to do it. Embrace, engage, empower every experience that it is. And, this is a big thing for me. This is a quote that I live by. And it is the greatest act of courage is to be and to own all of who you are without apology, without excuses, and without masks to cover the truth of who you are. And this very idea, and what this very quote says to me is about taking ownership. The very idea that, the challenges that come with our life is about, I need to be able to deal with it. I need to be able to understand it, but I need to take ownership over that, and my ownership over my very experience and how I react and how I actually process that to move forward. And the more we can do that, the more individuals that can play that role, but, as an individualized approach, but then create the collective impact, we're all going to be, better off. And that's about understanding how we be the difference in someone's life, and that's yours, and how that moves going forward. I'm going to go here just to finish here, but then I'm going to go into the empowering caregivers information, and that is, how can I help? And it's the very idea of open the conversation, check in with your crew, invest in yourself, give yourself permission to feel. And as parents, and I had this conversation with a lot of parents or caregivers in the journey that I have, is about understanding that we are all flawed as humans in terms of our ability to do and to be. But there's not so much as a negative that we look at that. It's about understanding that we don't always get things right, but we allow ourselves to work through the process. And as a flawed parent, as a flawed individual, as a flawed mate. But it's not a negative thing that I'm looking at. It's about understanding that I don't get everything right, and that is okay. But as long as we're having a go, as long as we're there to be a part of those conversations, those experiences, and that is fine. And then it's about understanding how you connect with your community and trust your judgment. Trust in your gut is the biggest thing that is appreciated that we can all do. So it's allowing that to work. I'm going to go through here now just to sort of touch base, and hopefully this works as well. That empowering caregivers is obviously a very experience that we're all having, and appreciating this. And as a caregiver, this very experience here is that, about understanding early recognition, early intervention, and then being a gateway provider, because, that's the very idea as a caregiver, is that we're a gateway provider to the opportunities that can be a part of that children's life that we're in contact with, and that we're not to be the answer all the time, because being the answer doesn't create ownership back for the child. If the child can't take ownership over their very experiences, we're there just to help them, make sure that we're guiding them through those processes. And what I like to say, my parents has been for my life, is about being that bumper rail. And as parents, as caregivers, and coaches or managers or teachers or whatever it is, about being that bumper rail, not doing it for them, but allowing them that process to understand how they work through that. And then you talk about early recognition is about reduce the effect and assisting in development. Early intervention is assessment and treatment pathway, understanding the process there, and intervene to reduce the impact that those experiences have in someone's life. And then gateway provider is about access to help seeking and find suitable treatment pathway. And at Love Me, Love You, we have a support pathway program that you all have access to, which allows people to we actually help people navigate the mental health system. And navigating the mental health system is quite a complex one if you're trying to do it by yourself, if you don't really know where to go to or how to get there. And with what we do at Love Me, Love You, part of that support pathway program is, it's a whole counselling triage service that we process in here, and then we have a referral network across the board. There's about 450 people across the country that we're directly linked into to help make that service work. And that's not just from a psychologist and psychiatrist. We talk about kinesiologists, we talk about nutritionists, we talk about exercise science or fitness, people in the fitness and wellbeing world, osteos, anything in allied health and mental health is what we're a part of. And we should make sure that process works for everybody, because support is individualized, and it's not just to say because what worked for me is going to work for you. That it is individualized, and that very treatment and recovery process is, needs to make it work for every individual that works. And then obviously we break it up into the different domains of a child's life. We've got child, family, school, life events, and social here, and the different temperaments. And we look at a risk versus protective factor that is a part of a child's life. And the risk is about what happens that increases their vulnerability to mental health challenges. And the protective factors are what increases their ability to cope. Okay, and you can see the different answers that we have here, which is just a small snapshot, which I can get to Natalie to share with everybody, but you have it obviously on the screen here. Looking at the different domains and the process that it works for every individual. And as empowering caregivers, it's about looking for the signs, and as I said here, not just a checklist, but just things to certain things to keep an eye on. And that is difficulty adjusting to new situations, inability to form relationships, excessive violence towards other children, significant and age inappropriate separation anxiety, very withdrawn behaviour, drastic changes in behavioural personality. This is a big one that we understand. When we're looking for things that are happening and an impact that's happening in kids' lives and as adults, it's about those changes in behavioural personality over a period of time. And that period of time that we measure that on is about 5 to 7 days as at early recognition. And there's a difference between mental health challenges and stress. Okay, and the impact that stress has. Stress, you can read that pretty quickly. Okay, but it's about mental health challenges. What we're talking about here is about the period of time, which is, as I said, minimum 5 to 7 days. Severe mood swings, difficulty concentrating, trouble sleeping, persistent nightmares, loss of interest in favourite activities, consistent physical pain. There's been a lot of research around with children at school, and in terms of reading the data about visits to the school nurse or to the school sort of to where they sort of say they got their stomach pains or the headaches that are happening. Is what we say here is that there is a consistency in that data that is being there, is that it's obviously linked more to a mental health challenge. Obviously, there could be things that are, in terms of physically that are happening that we can take care of pretty quickly. But in terms of what we look at in terms of our stomach aches or sort of stomach pains that are happening, is that all our nerve endings actually end up in our stomach. And the very idea of that more stress and the more impact that it's having through our mental health, it obviously all then links back into our stomach. And I said before, it's about trusting our gut, and trusting that very experience and reading that very process. Consistent physical pain, as I said here, and loss of appetite for an extended period. An idea as a caregiver, as I said, is about actually bumper rails. Okay, so not to be the answer, it's about there to be guiding through that process and allowing those types of conversations to be had. And the easiest way that you can actually open those conversations with children is, obviously with open-ended questions, building the rapport into it and appreciating that, just telling them that they're loved and cared for and that you're there for them when they want you to be, and allowing that to, and without being annoying in that process. Because being annoying in the process, as you will know, is that shuts kids down pretty quick. So building the rapport, sharing your own experiences, sharing your own vulnerabilities that have happened. Obviously we talk about the protective factors, and what you're doing there is actually creating a space for them, a safer space for them to understand that we all do go through challenges. We all go through different experiences in our life that have a negative impact on how we go about it. But creating that very safe, inclusive and supportive space and environment for a child allows them to feel more connected into this type of conversation and process, and allowing them to work for it. So, and then we go through here about, as I said, how to support your teens' mental health. There's different ways to promote good mental health for teens in any child. Whether you said you have direct contact as your own child, or in terms of relationships that you have with an auntie, uncle, whether it be a coach or someone involved at your club, or wherever you are, just the very friends that you're a part of in your life. And about encouraging your teen to have regular bedtime and enough sleep, which there's a constant battle we're all going through, but understanding how people disconnect in the very capacity to have positive, structured sleep routines. Even for myself, I'm 40 years of age and I have a sleep routine, and working that, so I disconnect before I go to bed through technology, through my own headspace, and actually so I can reconnect the next morning. and allowing that process to work. Encourage eating healthy, well-being exercises, encourage regular exercise, especially something social like team sport or with friends, or, just general idea of maybe if you have a dog, just walking the dog and doing it together. Showing interest in their friends, and showing and understanding when we talk about showing interest in your friends and facilitate positive friendships in the social activities, is about understanding also their communication channels. As a child now, these days, they are very shut down in their process. It's because technology is one thing, okay, but it's appreciating their communication channels and reading the play on the different communication channels that each child has. Understanding that, some kids might like through messaging, but that's in terms of the first process. Okay. And then we escalate that information and that conversation to a more meaningful one-on-one with our verbal language, and allowing that process to work. Spend time with your team, actually being there, being very connected into very experiences that happen with your child. Not having your phone on you when you have these experiences with your child, allowing that to happen. Because, and we've all done it, as I said, flawed parenting, flawed humans, is that we're so connected to our phones because of that feeling of being needed. And the more, notifications I get, or calls or messages or emails, it gives me that instant gratification of feeling needed. But it takes away our very ability to actually be present in our situation and our experience with the children that we come into contact with. And as I said, I'm the same, and I have to, concentrate on that a lot to say, okay, there's no phone time here. I'm playing here. And, for me, the very experience, like I'll give you an example, was yesterday, my son, my Alexander, who's 5, and I, every Sunday, we will actually go for a bike ride or on a scooter together without my phone, and just being there with him, for that 45 minutes to an hour is for him, I believe, is the most amazing experience. For me, it's about being that amazing experience because I'm actually there with him and appreciating that very experience that, as I said, 9 years ago, it was nearly something that would have been just a dream, not actually a reality. Talk about your own thoughts and feelings. We'll talk about here. And then how to talk about it if you think your teen needs extra support. Try a how question. How are you going? How's school today? How are you feeling about your exams? How are you feeling about this? How are you feeling about that? How does it feel to be you today? The very idea of a how question, it actually creates a trigger into them about feeling acknowledged or feeling cared, because you're actually asking them how they're working it through that process of them. Use an I statement. I've noticed you seem sad lately. I noticed that this happened lately, or I've noticed that I heard this, you say this lately. I noticed that you said this just before. Bring it back to say, I care and I acknowledge the idea. And then, do you want to talk about it? As I said, appreciating the communication channels is that at the very time, they probably don't want to talk about it. But then you follow that on with the idea to say that, I'm here. I'm here when you want to talk. Then following that process and saying, I'll check in on you tomorrow. I'll check in on you the next day. Consistently checking in with that process is, what makes it work. Offer to help in different ways. If your teen starts to talk to you, respond with empathy, calmness, and curiosity. Don't come with judgment. Don't come with an answer. Just come with the idea that you're there and connected into their conversation. And as I said, listen, and keep it open, and don't judge. As I keep saying. And what next? The support services that are available. Talking to school, talking to the club about what they've been seeing or they've been hearing, they've been experiencing. But as I said, and navigating through that mental health system might be that you need to contact Love Me Love You, so we can help you navigate through that very mental health system and get the appreciation of the support that is deserved and needed. And then create experiences as a family or as a caregiver, as a relationship, direct relationship. You create different experiences that you're both into, getting in on their level. And that's the thing, is that kids, they believe that as adults, you're just an adult now, okay, that you haven't done these things that they're doing. And you probably haven't, because life has evolved so far in the world that we're living in, especially with technology, that the very idea that a teenager these days will actually process and filter in more information in a week than I would have in a year at the same time, just due to the accessibility of information and experiences. Technology has created a funnel that has just gone so much like this, and you're trying to fit it into this filter. Whereas before, we had actually had those experiences that were just like this, and it filtered through a lot easier. But that very experience of being a child these days is about, as I said, guiding them through to help them understand how they process all that information, so it creates less stress and less anxious feelings of dealing through that, and then just get on their level. And I say that all the time, but you got to get on their level and appreciate their life and who they are and how they go about it, and just be there. So hopefully that all sort of works for everybody. So and making that work. So it is an exciting experience to be a part of. We talk about the different challenges that are a part of people's lives. Is that every opportunity is a chance to shine. But the more we take this in this world and look at playing a victim mentality, that all these things are happening and try and take that on. But it's about sort of evolving, and I keep saying it, evolving with the very process, evolving with the system and controlling the controllables, making it work for you and the people that are directly contacted and interacting with you. And with our experiences with children, is that allow them to take ownership over their experiences as well. My son Alexander has a range of social and emotional challenges, that we are constantly dealing with. And when people talk about, and when I talk about that with people, is that we're working through that process. I am in the space, as I said, a flawed parent. My wife is a flawed parent, but we're working this together. And it's about understanding how we work that journey and that process together, and allowing it to, understand how we can actually make it happen. Because all we want to do in our lives is create happiness, especially for our children. We want to create happiness. We want to create opportunities, and we work our bums off to make that work. But it's not about protecting them from the challenges that come part of their life. It's about understanding how we help them process the idea of those challenging experiences that are part of their life, and then how they actually use those tools to move forward. And that is a consistent everyday investment. It's not just saying something that I'll actually do something once a month. Very appreciation of those conversations and experiences that we have with the children that are part of our life. It makes us better as humans and as caregivers. As I said, it's not being the answer. It's about being a gateway provider for the opportunities and the experiences that are a part of their life. If you do need further support, we're working through that very process we talk about here, is that, I talk about this as a process to say that, there's people that are a part of this life that we need to make moving forward, and allowing that to happen, as I said, is about sort of working that through. And if you do need immediate support, obviously O is a first place in terms of that high risk, and emergency services do a welfare check and making sure that everyone's okay and safe. But obviously there's a service lines here, and then we have our support pathway, which you can contact us through the website, also social channels. And then please, contact us, and let's work together to make a difference, because that's what we want to do in this life, is to make a difference. So a lot of information there. I appreciate everyone's time and listening in and taking all that in. But if you want to know more or how to help and how we can help you, please contact us and we can make that happen. To appreciate it. And as I said, I have said before, I think, time is our most precious gift we can give anyone, but time is our most precious gift we can also give ourselves. So make sure you're taking care of yourself and the people around you, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lance. I really appreciate you giving your time to us today. And there's so many. I write notes all the time. There's so many notes that I've taken, but as I'm sitting back, I'm so grateful that you've given us some more things to think about. Things like be a bumper rail. So be that gate rail and be the bumper rail. And I know as a parent, as a teenager, I definitely resonated with when you said try not to be annoying as well. So it's like, yeah, try to be that bumper rail, try to be without being annoying. But the other thing from a leadership point of view, and as managers, we have to, as managers, as leaders, as coaches, as parents, we have to really stay out of that trying to be the answer and really allow that ownership.
Yeah, most
And I
definitely.
appreciate you reminding us about that today as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We talk about when sharing our experiences and allowing ourselves to work through that with each other, is that sometimes it does take a little gentle reminder. Yeah. Actually have the greatest impact on our lives as humans. So, but that very experience of sharing, and what they talk about, a problem shared is a problem cared. So working through that, because we don't have all the answers all the time, and we're not to have the answers all the time, because we're not perfect humans. We're just having a crack.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really liked your, I know it's a sporting analogy, but around reading the play. So I think one of the things for me, the way I can kind of stay out of being the answer, is to sit back and read the play rather than being in there trying to play the game and solve all the problems. It's like just sit back, read the play. So I really like that as an idea that we can take forward as well.
Yeah, cool. No, much appreciated.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, Lance. I really appreciate your time. And everyone, there's a great program we've laid out. All of our speakers are donating our time and their time so that we can bring mental health awareness. So check out our website at opendoorcoaching.com.au. We've got some links there where you can donate to Love Me, Love You as well, if you like. If you'd like to do that, and you can check out our whole program. So thank you, Lance, on behalf of everyone. We're very grateful for your time today, and we really appreciate your message. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Natalie. Much appreciated.
Thank you. We'll say goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.